Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Kwanzaa. You know what they say, it's always Christmas somewhere in the world. Welcome back to another weekly stream, the Indies Under the Knife stream, where I take a look at games you've been sending me and give some feedback on them. So we have a 2-hour stream. We have 4 games scheduled. Try and spend roughly half an hour with each one. And these streams are built around a theme. So I try and put games together that have a similar sort of theme. And this week we are looking at games that are either auto battlers or something to do with building combos and synergies of cards or units or something like that. And the reason I do it this way is, well, first, it just gives me a rationale to help pick which games to look at. Because I was doing them in chronological order before, and you just ended up with a random bunch of games each time, and no way to compare them. And then secondly, it allows us to compare them, so we can look at something that one of the games is doing well, and see how it might transfer over to one of the other games, and so on. So there is a if this is your first time on the channel, there is a link in the stream description that says submit your game for Indies Under the Knife. You can submit it there. And everything that gets submitted goes into this big spreadsheet of mine, and that allows me to kind of work out what to look at on any given week. This week we've got Auto Battlers and Combo Builders. We've got a couple of games that are already on Steam as demos. We've got Become the Moon and RNG Jesus Slayer, which is an interesting title. And then a couple of games that are on itch as well. And the kind of rules of this stream really is that the games that you send can't be commercially released. So if I click on itch or I click on Steam and the game has a price on it, then I'm not going to be playing it, because the whole point of this is you're supposed to get as much feedback as possible on your game, like the core idea of your game, the mechanics, the art, all of that kind of stuff, before you go to market, right? I'm here as a game design channel, and I do this stream because it's interesting and it's fun, but I want to help people who are still working on their games to make them better before they release them. And for that reason, I sometimes play games that are out, but not on this stream. This stream is just all about games that aren't out yet, and can we compare and contrast them? What could each one of these do better, and so on. So if you're thinking of submitting a game to Indies Under Knife, just bear that in mind. It needs to be a game that's not out yet. I do occasionally on this channel play games that are out that I just am interested in and like the look of and want to review. But the main thing I do on this channel is this weekly stream, which is all about looking at games that aren't out yet. So I'm going to start by looking at Become the Moon, because it is the kind of closest thing to a game where when I look at the Steam page, I sort of know exactly what it is because it's in a genre I know. So it's a deck building auto battler. You draft cards, cast spells, and spawn minions in an attempt to build a team strong enough to become the moon. So I've got a Steam demo of this. That's not a Steam demo. That is Discord. Here we go. And let me just get this loaded up. I think I've got everything installed. I thought this one had a pretty neat art style as well, so I try and make sure that the first game we play is somewhat visually appealing, because sometimes we get kind of earlier prototypes that are a little bit ropey to look at, and that's fine as well, but it's good to start the stream with something a bit more polished, I think. Just going to shrink myself down. So this is made by a team of 4, I think. Nice little parallax on the menu. Whee. Hi folks in the chat. Hope you're doing good. And please do give the stream a like if you're in the chat at the moment, because it will just help more people see it, even when it goes out afterwards as a VOD. Yeah, it could be really helpful. Okay, this is your hand. Each round you draw 5 cards. So it's going to be interesting to see how this handles the tutorial, because you kind of want to explain everything as if it's someone's first deck builder, but you don't want to make it so long-winded that someone who is really familiar with the genre gets bored, right? Drag a card from your hand onto the battlefield to play it. We've got some pigeons and some dormant ents, which are just sleepy trees. Playing minions, play another minion from your hand. Here's my mana, my energy. So far, this is all familiar to me. It's kind of Hearthstone Battlegrounds type territory. The mana cost of a card is the number in its top left corner. Time to end the round. Okay, we get an auto battle. Caged birds used to be dragons. Yep, I understand all of this stuff, so I'm going to click through this quite quickly because this is all the same as Hearthstone. Yep. This all works the same as Hearthstone Battlegrounds. The main difference is we're building a deck rather than like buying units in between rounds. And I'm sort of wondering how much that kind of difference in how you control the build is going to make it feel better or make it feel too random. Not sure yet. There we go. So you don't control them during the combat. That's why it's an auto battler. And if any of yours survive, then they hurt the other character, right? So it's sort of Magic the Gathering with all of the attacks automated, that kind of thing. Draw 3 cards, destroy this. Gain 2 mana this round, destroy this. I'm going to go for the one that gives me more mana. Okay, so we're going to draw some cards now. We draw 5, so it's not up to 5 because my spell is still in my hand. I've got a load of single-use spells. Modifications will make... Modifications you make to minions outside of battle are permanent. Okay. So these are permanent. I'm going to get my extra 2 mana just so I can play these as early as possible. If your minions can't defeat the enemy hero on their own, then both characters duel to the death. Interesting. So that maybe speeds up the flow of the game a bit more than other games of this type I've played before. Minions you summon during battle attack immediately. That's a relic, so I'm guessing that does... What we really need is when you hover over this, the keywords get tooltipped. Right, so it should tell me what a relic is when I hover over that. See, we've got that here for retain. But that's not actually a keyword on the card. So it feels like the tooltipping of the keywords is a little bit inconsistent. This is small fry stuff though. This game is really polished already. I love the visual presentation of this. There's lots of movement. I think the attack movements could feel a little bit more aggressive. They feel a bit more like... Oh, I'm just going over here to visit this character, you know? Your deck is empty. You tier up when your deck is empty. Okay, now I get to add stuff to the deck. So we do a mini draft. We're going to have 5 selections where I keep 1 and throw 2 away. We're going to go for the wizard because I was playing spells before. Maximum mana, that's always a good thing to have. I'm going to go for wizards. So this guy's theme seems to be wizards and birds, which is fun. So now we've got the deck we started off at the beginning plus the 5 cards I just added. I'm going to use this Frostbite immediately because it's going to get rid of one of those guys. Ah, okay. This is a spell that I use during the battle? Maybe? So that's there readied as a spell, but I'm not actually using it right now. I can't preemptively use that. But if it's random, then what's the benefit of using it during the battle instead of using it at the start? It's kind of like a kind of panic button, I guess. Right. That triggers on the battle spell casting, so I'm going to put that in to synergize it with that. Okay. They do cast as part of the auto battling, so they cast before the minions attack each other. This is all explained very well. It hasn't spent too long explaining the features that I already understand. It has taken the time to explain, you know, this is attack and this is defense and all of that kind of stuff, which you would need if this is the first game of this type that you've played. But it didn't spend too long on that, and it spent a decent amount of time explaining all the things that, as far as I'm aware, are, you know, features that make this different from similar games. So just because you can't see it because my logo's over it, this bar over the left is my relics, which are kind of like Slay the Spire relics. So things that trigger something all the time. So minions I summon during battle attack immediately. Now I don't have anything that summons minions during battle at the moment. I've only got the minions I put down myself. But I need to remember that I've got that because I might be able to do stuff with it. I think that's what I like about deck builders in general, is you sort of create your own opportunities. You know, you've got this backlog of stuff that can happen based on what you put in the deck. So you're kind of creating your own opportunities, but then you still have to notice them when they're there, right? And that's a really interesting mix of strategy and tactics. Like, you build the long-term strategy by what you put in your deck. Like, strategy is long-term planning. Tactics is what do you do moment to moment when you're thinking of a turn or the next 3 turns. And the way that deck builders generally work is you get to do both of those things, right? An auto battler generally leans more towards strategy because you don't get to control the moment-to-moment tactics. But it feels like there's the kind of friction you're getting between the genres here is quite nice. I'm getting a nice sense of, like, there's a decent amount of control over what I get to do here, even though it's an auto battler. Restore your character's health to full. Costs 1 more each time. Okay, am I just getting given that? Yeah, okay. I've got 6 out of 10. Oh, that's my hand limit. I'm not sure that needs to be as pronounced as it is in the UI. But, yeah, this is my health over here. I'm gonna play Medicrab. And I may as well play Build, because that allows me to play more other cards. Although, was that a spell? I can't see where it's gone. Maybe should have played my wizard first. My wizards get stronger when I play spells. But I can't afford to play a spell now, so I'm just going to put everything down. Now, one of the problems I could see in this game would be if it turns out that I can kind of no-brain it and I can just put everything down every turn and that is how you win the game, then maybe we've got a problem. But I'm not saying that's what's happening because I haven't played it enough to see. Right, I need more spells to trigger my... I've got 2 of those wizards in my deck. One's there. I can change the order of them. I'm just going to pick all spells this time. I'll put another one of him down. We can change the order of these guys. This guy attacks when a battle spell goes off. I'm going to put him towards the end so he has more chance to use that. We'll play the Frost. We'll exhaust our Dormant Ent. Your leftmost minion copies the stats of the leftmost enemy minion and attacks immediately. Okay, so... I'm going to put that on one of my wizards. So I'm going to put my wizard in the leftmost position so that he gets the mimicry. Because that will make him really powerful. He'll go up to 9 attack, 9 health. So he'll attack immediately, and whoever he attacks, he'll survive. And if he attacks the big guy, he's going to take off more than half his health in one go. So we'll go for that. And yeah, hi folks in the chat. If you have any feedback for the developer as I'm playing this, then please leave it. They'll be able to see the chat afterwards in the VOD. Sometimes I take bits of these games and edit them down into shorter videos if I think the game is really interesting. But mostly the feedback in the VOD is going to be like the longer form feedback. So if you have any thoughts about anything you can see here, please do say. I'm trying to think out loud as much about the as much as possible about the strategy that I'm using, because that kind of shows that the game works in terms of being a strategy game, that I can think these things through, right? We've got a little speed controller over here. It's got this kind of adaptive music as well, where the drum and bass drums come in during the battle and then drop out again when you're planning. Right. So neither of us won that, so we just kind of headbutted at the end. Okay, so I've got a cool synergy between these cards. This one boosts the health of a minion based on how many spells I have in my hand, and I've only got spells at the moment. And then this one sets the attack or health to whichever is the highest. So I'm going to put these both on my taunt minion. So it's using the same visual language here as Hearthstone, where a taunt has a shield around it. And that basically means that the enemies will automatically attack that one first. And that can kind of preserve your other ones that are more useful or more powerful or whatever. One thought I just had about the visual design of this. Like, all of this is kind of very, like, very, very pretty. I love the character design. All of the interface feels really nice. I think one thing that could be done to create a bit more depth and a bit more clarity about what's important is these black outlines that are just in the background. I think these could be faded down a little bit so that we get a bit more contrast in the actual minions. Because having these black outlines on all of these bits that are just background detail kind of makes them look more important than they are. And if you look at this tile grid underneath, that's probably the level of contrast you want for a background element that is not really part of the gameplay. And these two scrolls that the characters are on is kind of useful, but it's not gameplay important. So like this line here, these lines, all of this, I would make it sort of more of a faded brown colour. And that will just make everything here pop a little bit more and be a bit more prominent. And you could probably say the same thing about some of this round here. Because wherever you've got these black outlines, it's sort of telling you that this is an important object. And I get that it's an art style, but, you know, this is a game, not a comic book. So every visual choice you make is part of the interface. And yeah, that's kind of the only piece of criticism I have about the visual design of this, really, is that the hard outlines tell you something is important, and maybe in some cases it's not as important as it looks. What's this? Oh, that shows us our progression through the levels. That's cool. Yeah, I love the character design and the relationship between the character and the stuff they get as well, because here we've got like yeah, like a bird wizard, a wizard who collects wizards and birds and trees. So it's really fun. It's really fun thematically, and this kind of makes me interested in seeing what the rest of the game is like in terms of the characters and the units that you get as well. So I'm going to play that combo I talked about a minute ago. This guy's got 11 health now, and now he's also going to have 11 attack. So all these guys are going to rush to attack him. He's only actually going to survive 2 attacks from these guys because they have 6. So 2 of them attacking is going to do 12 damage. But I think that's a pretty good start. And I'm not going to use my Medicrab because it heals to full and I've only lost 2 health. So yeah, the novice in the chat was saying just maybe a little bit more impact when they hit each other. There's a bit there. I just think that could be amped up a bit. The animation's all there in terms of giving us the information of what's happening, but maybe a little bit more crunch to it, you know? That lets me put taunt on a specific enemy minion. That might be helpful, actually. So these reward cards you get, the ones that look like this, the spells that look like a constellation, they are one-use spells, so you don't get them back in your deck after you've used them. Oh, we've got some really interesting characters here. Very kind of Adventure Time vibes. See, I don't have any minions that I summoned during the battle. I think those kind of spells where you discard stuff to draw more stuff is often quite helpful. And then you've got spells like this. So minions in all future drafts gain 2/2. So this spell is really powerful for building up your power over the long game. But you've got to basically have a turn of a battle where you sacrifice 2 mana to play this. And then for the entire rest of the game, everything you buy is going to be stronger. But you're sacrificing a lot of your mana pool and getting kind of punched in the face in order to do that. So that's an interesting interaction. I'm going to go with the Amber Mage because we don't have many higher cost cards. Farm Witch. Look at these guys. We've got a scarecrow that we're fighting, and we've got some crows. That's cool. Crows with little hats. So now I've got more cards than I can fit on here, I think. I'm going to put the taunt on the character with the lowest attack. So attacking their taunt, because they had a taunt on here, I've just moved it over to here, so attacking their taunter is going to hurt me less now. I don't know if there's a way you can, like, can you throw away minions if you want to add some in that... I don't think you can. Right, keep this guy at the end, because he does stuff when things attack, so I want him at the end. And... yeah, the order isn't going to make loads of difference in this case, I guess. I feel like this has done a pretty good job of taking how Hearthstone Battlegrounds works and adapting it for a single player thing. Oh, you can drag the minions back to your hands. Let me try that. When I cast a battle spell, I draw a card. That was the relic I just got. Okay, we can bring them back to our hands, apparently. If you want to remove a minion from your team, drag it back into your hand. Okay, that's cool. And we have a hand limit of 10, but that still gives us quite a lot to work with here. Right, he triggers on a battle spell. Okay, so I'm going to try and play that combo I played. Channeling and Acclimatize is a really cool combo. It's channeling on that one. And actually, maybe I'm going to use the rest of my turn to do a propaganda, because I need to play them at some point. And this isn't the worst opponent. He's got an interesting setup here. Listen to the Wind does nothing. It's got all these ominous wind cards. Ominous wind battle spells. I'm guessing what that means is when all these are gone, he's going to have some other spell. Some spooky... some kind of spooky scarecrow spell that I'm not expecting. Beat him. I would say one of the things about the sound design here is every time I hear that slowdown effect at the end of a combat, it makes me think I've lost. Even though I've just seen myself win. That record slowdown sound, that kind of sound, it's a cool effect, but I think we have such a strong association between that and loss because of how it's used in other games or because of how it's used in other media, that I think you can have it there, but it needs something on top of it that sounds celebratory. Because if you think of fanfares in games, they nearly always rise. Da 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 da. And if you have a descending sound, particularly that kind of boo, it sounds like a defeat. And it's not a defeat. I just won. Ominous. I'm going to get this relic for flying minions. 20% chance to dodge attacks on flying minions. Because we got quite a lot of flying characters. We're fighting a bug. They've got a fatigue spell. Deal 3 damage to a random enemy minion. Summon another fatigue with 3. Okay, so this character is going to get more... It's going to have this auto spell that triggers every round. So basically, I just need to go as aggro as possible because they do not have a lot of attack over here. And this is their main source of attack. So I just need to smash through these as quick as possible. So we're going to play our Frostbolts. That was weird timing. I played a spell and then this showed up. Right, I'm going to finish this combat and then we'll move on to the next game. But this, I'm really impressed with this. I don't really have much criticism for it. I think the The music is a little bit manic in some places, but I think it fits well with the kind of Adventure Time-y type vibes of the game. But I know it could be an acquired taste for some people, because it's just got this kind of weird psychedelic post-rock kind of feel, and then the drum and bass when you're fighting. I think it's really cool, but I know it could be a deal breaker for some people, because it is quite manic. Okay, leftmost minion is going to copy the stats. Let's put that on. Let's have our wizard for that, because that's going to give him 14 health. And then he will be able to survive this. So that seems like a decent setup. And I'm going to bring my tree back into my hand. I really love the fact that you can place them down, power them up, and then pull them back and use them later. That's a really nice feature. Right, I don't have enough mana to use him. Let's gain some maximum mana. My mimicry didn't seem to trigger. See, that's really powerful now, that fatigue spell. I'm not going to make it. Died. I died. I want to say as well, before we move on, that combat sort of showed what this game can eventually be about, because that was a really interesting combat puzzle. I didn't really have enough time to think it through in terms of how to approach that, but that was dramatically different from how the other combats played out. You know, we had a string of enemy minions that were just there as bullet sponges. They didn't have any attack, they just had loads of health, and then that spell on the other side that was getting more and more powerful. And in terms of like constructing a demo, like when I play a demo of someone's game, I never know like if the ordering of it is the same as the intended experience of the main game. But as a demo, that works very, very well for me, because we've done, I don't know how many rounds I played, maybe 8, maybe 10. And then within half an hour, we've hit this point where the game is showing that it's not just a single player implementation of Hearthstone Battlegrounds with deck building thrown in. You're actually going to get these sort of boss puzzle type scenarios in it, and I find that really appealing. And yeah, I think that does a lot to kind of show the strengths of this game. So let me just hop out of that, because we've got to move on to the next one. So I'm gonna just show people the store page for that game quickly. So yeah, that's Become the Moon, which is a really neat mix of a kind of card-based auto battler and a deck builder. And I know it's very easy now to just hear these words and think it's a mishmash of like keywords that are sort of popular types of game at the moment, but I really do think this one implements those two things very well together and puts them together in a really nice, interesting way. And this feels particularly strong as a kind of single-player game, because often when I play auto battlers, like the online ones, like the Dota and Hearthstone ones, I often feel like playing against other people doesn't really add anything except time pressure. So when you make them single-player, you need something else. You need something to kind of make it feel varied as you play through, and it not just be like the game gets difficult because numbers go up. And what I experienced while playing this was a really interesting set of encounter designs as well. So it's not just like the base game is cool, but the actual progression of the enemies that you fight against and what they're throwing up against you and how you have to think your way around it is really interesting. I'd definitely be interested in checking that one out some more and seeing how it develops and what it ends up being, you know, because it's very close to launch already. But the nature of these games is you can kind of keep adding stuff, and you can keep adding decks and characters and stuff. So, yeah, really interesting to see where that one goes. Next up on the list, we're going to check out whichever ones of these is playable in browser. I think this one, Galactic Combat. This is a prototype, so don't expect high art from this one, because this one's super... Jokester Studios said, can you check why reviews are only positive? What do you mean? I mean, it probably hasn't been played by loads of people at this stage if it's only in demo, so... But yeah, it has a game demo. A lot of the time with these games, if you go on there and it's like only got positive reviews, it's just because it hasn't been played a load. But, I mean, I could see why that was from playing that. I think that was very, very solid. And one of the good things about this Steam page is you just immediately see what it is, right? So I don't feel like anyone is going to play this who doesn't find everything they see here appealing, right? So it's not misrepresenting what it is. And the better your the better that your Steam page represents the game for what it is, the more likely you are to have more positive reviews, because people aren't going in expecting one thing and then getting another. But yeah, I don't have any... I had a tiny bit of feedback about the visual design just to make some certain things clearer, but I don't have any negative comments about that one, and I'm not sure what anyone else would find, unless it's just kind of fundamentally a type of game they don't like. Okay, I'm creating something. You'll be controlling multiple units. Combat consists of 2 phases, planning and executing. During planning, you need to plan up to 3 actions for each unit. During execution, you watch them perform planned actions in real time. There will be some visual indication of what units have planned and when it's going to happen. All actions are performed at synced intervals, so if 2 actions have the same index, they're guaranteed to interact with each other. Your goal is to get to the end of the level and kill all enemies. At first, it may be quite challenging, so try at least a few times and you'll get the hang of it. If you die, you can just refresh the page to try again. So this is a prototype. It's called Galactic Combat here. And the developer has said, I'm evaluating whether this mechanic is too complex to be fun. And so it sounds like we've got action programming, which is... I think the last video game I played that did a lot of this was Frozen Synapse. If you've ever heard of that game, worth looking up. But there are quite a lot of board games that do this, where you program a series of actions and then you see them play out and you have control over some of what you can do, and some is kind of left to fate of what the rest of the game is doing while your characters kind of play out their actions. So it's a proven concept, and I think implementing it in a video game is going to come down to a lot of kind of UX stuff. So this is what I've already read. Left click to select a unit, select ability target move, right click to cancel. So left is generally to move to kind of confirm, and right click to cancel. Space is to say that I'm ready and to end the turn. Mouse button 4, I don't have on my mouse. Okay, so here's all the stuff they can do. And I need to move everyone there. So that's quite neat, because it kind of forces me to understand the basic, like how the controls work before we kind of end up getting shot at. So that's a nice setup. Right, these are my units. So these guys all have white lines on him, which I think means that they are going to attack him. Okay. And we've got lots of things we can do here. So I think one of the things I want to do, they are going to attack him anyway. So I'll see if I've got anything that can protect him to start off with. Do I have any sort of shield? Ah, yeah, look, an energy wall. Right, I'm going to put an energy wall there. So I think that 1 is telling me that that will be the first thing that happens. That's the index it was mentioned. And then she's going to run over there. and then shoot in that direction. Okay. Oh. So she's going to create a wall there, run over there, shoot in that direction. And I want to empower her shots so that by the time she gets there, she's got like stronger shots. So I'm going to do this red thing on her. And then I'm going to use a vacuum to try and pull everyone into the fire. Because this is showing me her attack. I think a thing that would be nice would be to have more color coding on these lines. Because, like, if we have a brown line representing movement, then maybe the attack line could be like a red dotted line. Because then we can see that the character is staying there, right? It's not a movement line. The character's not going anywhere. So it's a dotted line instead. And the red could show, okay, damage is going to happen along this line type thing. But so far, I haven't had a lot of difficulty understanding the mechanics. Or at least I don't think I have. Which is what we're testing for here. So it's kind of interesting. So we can give a unit blue power, which allows them to shoot shield at each other. That seems very dangerous if you get it wrong. Okay, he's got a shotgun shoot. We're gonna... Let's get him moving first. Seems to not be able to move very far, and I'm not sure why. Right, let's take a look at a turn and see what happens. I'm going to move the camera over here so we can see the enemies, because that's what we want to focus on, I guess. Space. Shield goes up. Oh. So I think maybe the shield got broken when she moved. I think maybe you have to stand still to sustain the shield, which wasn't clear when I did it. Right, he's going to do a jump smash over there. Actually, no. Let's do a bomb over there, and you do something else. You do a pull on... Can I... So I don't know how to... Oh yeah, I can cancel my last planned stuff. Okay. He's going to be reflecting. He's going to be doing a bomb. And she can't move. That's on a cooldown. That seems strange. She can just shoot. See, last turn when I pressed space and let it run, it got a bit jittery. And you really need to be able to see what's happening in this for it to be a fun payoff. He died. My shotgun guy died. Do I still have a chance? Probably not. I'm going to still try my best. So it's interesting, like the longer you plan your turn to be, the more opportunity the enemy gets to do stuff. Because they kind of have their own thing they're doing with their turn. That's fun, vacuum. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the... has anyone played Marvel Midnight Suns? It's made by the XCOM guys. Feels a bit like that. And I think... So there's a couple of things here. One of the things about the core question of is this a fun concept? I think it can be, and I think you've got all of these abilities implemented so that you can have them implemented. But an issue that it's creating is that we have just too many options here, and especially for just testing the concept and whether people find it fun, people are going to find it daunting, right? There's a UX principle that is like a general usability principle that you don't give people more than 7 options, and the smaller you make that number, the kind of more casual the game can be, right? So one example of where you see this a lot in games is starting hand size in card games. So when you play Magic the Gathering, you start with 5 cards. I think it's 5 cards, and that's a manageable amount. Hearthstone, maybe a lot of people would say Hearthstone is more casual than Magic the Gathering, and you start with 3 or 4 cards in your hand. And that is because then you have less information to pass as a player. And if you think about these, okay, move and shoot, maybe they're kind of free in terms of how much complexity they add to a player's turn. But they're also not in a consistent position because move has gone over there, which is confusing. So I would think maybe move and shoot your weapon are kind of free. And then maybe we should test this with maybe 3 abilities per character on top of those 2. Or maybe 4 at a stretch. But I think this is just too much. And it means that it's hard to get a read on... it's hard to get a read on how fun the game is, because I just feel like I'm trying to make a choice out of too many choices at any given time. Yeah, there's kind of a limit to... But basically, if you give people 7 choices, that tends to be their upper limit. And it's basically to do with short-term memory and how many bits of information you can hold in your head and compare at a time. And that is why if you do go the full hog and give people 7 choices or 8 choices or 9, some of those need to be really simple, like the cards in Slay the Spire that just add 1 defense on or add 1 attack on. You can give people more choice if some of the choices are so simple that they don't really have to think about them. But all of these are kind of, again, apart from shoot and move, all of these other things are kind of quite complicated little rules. And so I think my approach to this would be to give each of these characters a very clear specialism. Like make one of these people into like the person that does shields and boosts. And then maybe give them a clear indication on their design, even if it's just like the color of their tie or something, or the color of their hair. Just give them some clear indication that that is their role. They're the protector, so they're blue or something like that. And that will kind of help a lot of the game make sense. Because at the moment we don't have any sense of what these characters' roles are without clicking on them and seeing their abilities. And then that makes it hard to kind of decide who to use in what order as well. Okay, so I'm gonna try the setup I tried before, but I'm gonna move her over there first, and then create an energy wall there, and then not do anything else with her, because I think what happened before was my energy wall got cancelled because I moved. But even the fact that I can kind of play this twice and learn a lesson and then kind of implement what I've learned is a good start for this kind of game. You want that kind of element to it. That's what people get out of these games. Okay, I'm going to just move him up behind the energy wall. And do a reflect, which is probably useless at this stage because he's got the energy wall in front of him. And then this guy I'm going to send to the side. And then try and power up the other one with red power so that next turn they can do more damage, I think. Yeah, regarding this sort of 7 pieces of information thing. So when Apple was a new company, Steve Wozniak had this trick he used to do where he would go and find sort of teenagers that weren't necessarily programmers, and he would find people who could remember strings of 9 or more digits in one go, because in his mind that was a sort of characteristic of someone who had the potential to be a super programmer, because most people have this limitation of that number being between 5 and 7, And that's why we have like starting hands of, you know, between 3 and 7 in card games. We usually don't go higher than 7 because it's more than people can hold in their head. So yeah, Wozniak had this thing where if someone could hold 9 separate digits or 12 separate digits in their head, then they had some sort of savant level of short-term memory, and he thought that would make them a good employee. Okay, so they are not attacking us until we attack them, so that's good to know. They are going to do some attacking this turn. Move her forward. Oh, hang on. Okay. So this focus field draws their projectiles into the center. So if I put that there, all of these are... They're either going to go to the middle and stop, or they are going to go to the middle and pass through. So this guy needs to move out the way, just because I'm not sure how that's going to react. And this guy needs to go the other way. You can see how this kind of feels a bit like programming like Max Payne bullet time. And then once this guy gets to that point, I think we're able to bomb these guys. But yeah, I think if we think about the interface design of this, when I look at their planned moves, they look like 1,000 times resist people over here. If I had a visual distinction between which of these lines was walking and which one was shooting, it would help me loads. Because I can see these nodes, right? And if we use that rule I said about earlier, where an attack or an ability is a dotted line and moving is a full line, then it would be a lot easier to interpret what all of this means. Because I can kind of guess, but you know, this could be move, 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 or it could be move, shoot, ability. And I just need a distinction between the types of lines to give me that little bit more contextual information. And you don't even really need to explain overtly what that means. I think people will work it out, at least in your kind of demo. Right, he's walking over there. And then he's going to just do a kind of shotgun in their general direction. This is a neat idea. I like this. I think there's something here. But yeah, I think in terms of getting this to a demo that more people are going to understand and immediately have fun with, just limiting the amount of abilities each character has to move, attack, and maybe 3 others. Giving the character a clear visual clue as to what their role is based on their abilities. So blue for the healer. It doesn't have to be realistic. It doesn't have to be in keeping with the theme of the game. It could just be, you know, matching their hair color to the color of their abilities or something like that. It's just for the demo. It's not the end thing you're trying to do with the game. And then having a clear visual distinction about the lines and when is a line a movement line and when is a line an attacking or ability line. We don't have to know what the attack or the ability is, but I think just being able to see, because then if we look at these lines, like if I look at my yellow line coming from this character at the bottom, I can sort of see where they end their turn. And he's standing there, right? He's shooting all the way over there. That's a bomb that's making this thing. But I can at least see where everyone ends their turn, and I can see maybe where the enemies end their turn as well in terms of movement. And then we have the separate type of line that tells us where there's going to be all the kind of projectiles going around. Now, let's see how this works, because if we think back, I've had to think a lot for this turn, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because I think the sort of people who are attracted to this game will want a certain amount of complexity. But, yeah, this character, she's going to try and sort of suck all the projectiles into that middle. Hopefully, they're not going to go through and hit my middle guy. Hopefully, they're going to kind of go past him, but let's see what happens. See, I think the feedback, we might need that to be a bit slower to be able to see what's happening as well. You think that could be really satisfying to watch all of that, but it's just a little bit too fast. Yeah, you could see, and adding the complexity of like giving characters more moves, that could be the way that this progresses as you move through a... It looks like we've got more guys over here. So I think this is built so that you can kind of fight those guys and walk through and kind of do the whole installation, whatever this is. But I'm not going to get past the first one because I keep trying to do fancy stuff. The dash move is quite cool. It's neat. I can see the appeal of this. I definitely feel like it could be something. But yeah, I think, especially early on as well, you kind of need there to be a very quick payoff to get people into the loop of the game. And maybe it's because there are so many options to choose from. Maybe it's just kind of balancing. But I think maybe my characters have like the same amount of health as these guys, and then there's more of them or something, which means that I don't immediately get a feeling of success, which then means that you know, it doesn't kind of drive me to kind of play the next bit. I'm just going to shoot. I'm just going to shoot with everyone. See, that takes off such a small chip of their health. And I think if you do want to go for this structure where you have to fight loads and loads of guys, then these need to be like 1-2 shot kill people. Because you've already got the kind of unpredictability of them moving around and doing stuff. And I guess it is predictable because of the lines. But you're still not going to hit every time you try to hit, right? As far as I can tell. So I would make these guys quite easy to kill. And I would lean more towards... You know, I would lean towards the enemies feeling like glass cannons generally for a game like this, I think. Because you wanna reward the player for lining the shot up right. And at the moment, the emphasis is so much on protecting yourself that I don't feel like I can get a shot in and protect my people at the same time. And maybe the best approach to this would be to hide everyone around the corner first, and then like bring everyone down and shoot them. But that's the sort of thing I would expect to be doing at an advanced level in a game, not like for the first encounter. First encounter, you should just be able to no-brain it. And then as you move through the encounters, then introduce ones where you might have to think a bit more and use the more advanced kind of techniques. But this is a neat idea. I definitely think it's worth working on some more. Don't worry, Scope Sheep. There will be other times where we'll kind of have this type of focus. I get quite a lot of auto battlers and combo builder type games through, so I like this one. It's pretty neat. Let's take a look at Loot Boxer, which is the other itch game on my list. Again, all of these where they have a demo, they are available on the stream description. If you want to play any of these, they are mostly on there if the demo is public. And if you've joined later in the stream, please do give the stream a like. It just helps me show up more on, not necessarily for people to watch live now, but on the VOD. When the VOD goes out, more people will see it if it gets more interaction. So thank you all for coming along. Giving feedback to the developers in the chat is really helpful as well. I think most of the developers are here today, if they can be. Sometimes people have to watch it back on the VOD because they have jobs and stuff. Outrageous, I know. Right, I need to open it in this window. It's going onto the wrong window, and I can't get it to open on the right one. I don't know why. So I might have to do something janky with OBS here. There we go. Just switching OBS around. Here we go. So when I say combo builder, it's not really a genre, but because the games I get sent, you know, people send me a little description of the game, and I try and look at what the game is trying to do. And these games today, these 4 games, they're not necessarily in the same genre, but they all have a similar kind of thing they're trying to do for the player, which is give them an experience of like combining things and building combos in a satisfying way. So not necessarily a genre, just a type of design thing that games are trying to do, I guess. And sometimes when I do one of these streams, it's based on something more visual, like, you know, or something more kind of emotional based, like cute games or horror games or something. But I just try and put games together with games that are similar to them in some way. Otherwise, we just end up with a bunch of random games we can't really compare, you know? Okay, so I should just quickly take a look at what it says about this. Loot boxer, a busted build combo builder. Beat up those rogue loot boxes and get their glorious insides. Okay. Am I picking one of these things? Okay, I'm going to put these things on lines. Headbutt. Quick jabs. That's a bit... Oh, hang on, it's not loading, is it? I have the game open, but it's not opening on the right screen, and it's... Huh. I just can't get it to open on the right screen. When I open it on the other screen, and then try and mirror it, it doesn't work. Let me do a display capture on the other monitor. There we go. Okay, so I have these 3 things to choose from. Upgrade the next skill on this limb if you win the fight. Can only upgrade skills of common or lower. Okay, I'll put that on my arm. Launch 2 quick blows, each dealing 5 damage. So we're chaining these things together. Don't quite understand this interface, but it's interesting because it's showing sort of things chaining together as interesting combos. Select a prize. I'm trying to keep things on the arms so that they can combo, but I'm not quite sure I understand what the positions are. Oh, this is like it's a timeline. Now the problem is oh yeah, I can get the information up about. It's quite hard to get the information to reappear to tell you what these things do. Okay, if I win the fight, then it's going to upgrade that thing. And that upgrades this one to make Cascade do more damage. Okay, I get it. Right. So what's happening is that timeline is showing all the moves triggering, and we're actually beating up the loot box to get it open. It needs... I think that the sequence of attacking the loot box needs to be a bit slower and with a bit more feedback. But it's a cool concept. Okay, so we open it. If we don't deal enough damage, we don't get to open it, presumably. And then we get this kind of slot machine inside it that gives us the next move we get to add to our like programming sequence. Right. that can go on head. So each of these tells me which limb I can put it on. I've used up both my arms. And then I don't have anything on my legs or head yet. Some of the link between the iconography and which limb you can put it on is a bit confusing, because we just had one that had a hand in the image, and you could put it on your arms or your head, which I think is probably going to confuse people a little bit. And that comes down to just what's going in the imagery and the names of these abilities. This core mechanic, once you understand what's happening, you know, this is a timeline, like a video or audio editing timeline of attacks that happen on the box. That's really neat. I like that. Let's kind of watch it play out again. Yeah, so we didn't do enough damage that time to actually open the box. Now I think we need a bit more feedback in this timeline, because this timeline is the game, really, right? The being up the box is just the feedback back. So when this triggers, it's trying to do something to this ability, right? This anvil is trying to do something to these knives. So when the timeline goes, or the playhead goes through this, it needs to kind of do a particular kind of lighting up information thing that shows that it's trying to impact the next one, right? And I would think of, again, if we return to Hearthstone for a minute, sometimes your cards have conditions on them, and when the condition is met, it goes from like a green outline to a yellow outline to show you that something has changed. What we could do is we could have like one kind of outline that shows that this is trying to do a condition to the next one. And then when the condition is met and it can actually do it, that outline can kind of change to something else, so it could upgrade from like blue to green or something. But at the moment, when these are triggered, it looks like nothing happens. And that's not really what's happening. So this one says next hit with this limb does 100% damage, right? So that is making this one twice as powerful. So when it hits this wind up, this yellow glow, this should kind of like light up and glow and like pass something along to the next one to show that it's empowered it, and now this one is doing twice as much damage. Because at the moment it looks like these boosters don't do anything, and then the next ones are the only things that do anything. I think like hitting, like lighting up the things as they trigger, and if it's like an attack, light it up as a red attack or something, and if it's a empowering thing, maybe light it up blue, or some sort of indication of like when these things trigger on the timeline, what sort of thing they're doing. Okay, let's try this again. Battle Cry, increase all damage by 20%. That goes on the head. Okay, that makes sense to have that right at the start. And then we've got Cascade and Quick Jabs. And I'll just put them on each arm. Oh. It's quite fiddly trying to click on the handle there. I don't know if it's just got a smaller hitbox for the click than it looks like it has, but okay, finishing move, that can go at the end. Again, the icons just aren't very clear of what they do. I think this whole game is really neat, but I think you would need to collaborate with an artist to get them to make sure that these icons really, really communicate what is going on. Right. So that one is going to do extra damage based on every hit that we've had so far. That's 3 hits. That's 1 hit. So that should do 4 times 2. So that should do an extra 8. And then this is amplifying everything by 20%. So that's going to go up to 9, I think. It is very Gangnam Style LMFAO type. It works quite well, though. I would think of what they did with the music in the first game we saw in Become the Moon, right? Of having adaptive music where a bit comes in during the combat, and then the rest of the game it's much more just the bass, and then like the drums and stuff come in when the combat is happening, and maybe when the wheel is spinning, like the two kind of high tension points in the game. You can make reactive music very simply without having any middleware, by just having like two MP3s of the track that are mixed differently, and as long as they're looping at the same time, you can reduce the volume of 1 to 0 and then sort of lerp between the two volumes, and it's exactly the same as the DJ using a crossfader then. But they have to be exactly the same length files, otherwise they'll get out of sync with each other. Right, that one gives us more jabs, which is going to make this more powerful, so I'll put that there. Yeah, 17 on that last hit. That's very satisfying. Right. I don't know why clicking this handle is so difficult. It just needs to have a massive invisible hitbox on it that's way bigger than the object. Elderly streamer can't click on a handle. What's this? Dropkick. Deal 20 damage for each leg used. I don't have any other leg use. I'm gonna keep to a boxing style. Not bringing any legs in here. Do another cascade. I mean, I really like programming games. I think I hit a point with Zachtronics games where they got too hard for me, but one of my favorite, I think everyone has like a game they played on an old console that they think maybe they imagined, and for me that is probably something like Carnage Heart, which I'll show you in a minute. I won't jump out of the game to show you that, but that was like a PlayStation robot programming game where you had like a circuit board of how your robots would behave, and it was really neat. Upgrade the next skill on this limb if you win the fight. Can only upgrade skills of common or lower rarity. Okay, is this finishing hit a common? That is. Okay, I want to upgrade my finishing hit. Or do I want to upgrade my battle cry? I feel like that would be... Yeah, let's try and upgrade the battle cry. The thing that's neat about this training thing, once you've got it, you can move it around, right? So you can have... I can upgrade my battle cry. This triggers if I win the combat. So if I win the combat this time, it's going to upgrade my battle cry, and then I can move the training over to upgrade my finishing move as well. But the health of this box is getting quite high now, so I can't do it. So I lost my 1 heart. There's not really much I can do there to... It's kind of the situation I got in the first game. It's like once you've lost one, you're not going to win the next one either, because there's not much randomness in what's happening. So if you have to fight the same thing twice and you don't get a booby prize for defeating it, then you're going to lose the next one because you can't do anything to do it different. So I think what I would do is I would have like the tier of loot boxes, and every time you win one you go up, and every time you lose one you go down. And that means you can potentially kind of, when you lose a heart, you at least get to beat up the previous one, which you know you can beat, right? And then that gives you a chance to come back from it. But it's a cool idea. Headbutt. So we're starting with a headbutt, a drop kick, and a bunch of blows. So I'm going to put them in the order I imagine them happening in a kung fu movie, which is punching, headbutting, and then kicking. There we go. I want the battle cry because that sort of impacts everything. What does that do? Reuse the previous skill with increased damage. But it's on the head. And the only thing I've got on the head is... Well, I haven't got anything on the head. Have I got a headbutt? Oh, I can use that then. Okay. Apply 1 brittle for every 5 damage done. So, I think brittle is making future damage do more damage. It doesn't tell me here, so I'm going to have to just guess. So I need to do that at the beginning, because that is going to increase the damage of these other things. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like this. I think thinking through the interactions of the tiles, or whatever one you call them, the moves, is pretty neat. I think they need a much clearer sense of how they're interacting with each other as they trigger. Right. Now my drop kicks sort of enhance each other, so it makes sense to put two of them on. Can you imagine how funny this would be with a full animation of the character beating up the loot box? I think the idea of like programming the moves kind of makes it feel like karate or kung fu katas. Like if you've ever done martial arts training, you do forms where you learn sequences of moves, and it feels a bit like you're programming one of those. So I would... If someone was gonna pay me to come in and be like an art director on this project, I would really lean into like retro kung fu movie aesthetics, and like maybe you still have the cheesy house music, but you make it a little bit kind of Southeast Asian sounding in a much more kind of retro way, and then make all of this feel like a sort of 70s Bruce Lee film. In terms of like the text and the color choices and stuff like that, because it does feel like you're programming a martial arts kata or a martial arts form, and that's kind of fun. I'd lean into that a bit more, but the actual images used for the moves are just not super clear. Finishing move can go on the arm or the leg. Oh, I skipped. I didn't take one. That could be an interesting tactical choice if we can skip to get health back. Because I just skipped and there wasn't any benefit to skipping. It was just I clicked on the green button because it was there and it was a green button, you know. Get my finishing move that I missed out on last time. Three damage per hit delivered this combo. So it doesn't really matter where you put that one. $27. Yeah. I know that it probably will need a feature where the longer the combo is, the quicker it plays out, so that it doesn't get boring. I noticed on a mobile game, I was like playing a match 3 game on a mobile, and the further into the game you get, the quicker all of the animations of the things dropping and stuff are, so that once you know the game, it doesn't take as long to take each turn. make this loads of headbutts in this. Like, can you just imagine how funny this would be if we got to see, like, a bad Unreal character dressed up in a karate gi carry the moves out on a treasure chest? It would be so funny, particularly when you build a kata like this where it's just got 3 headbutts in it. So many headbutts. Come on. Oh, 2 off. So yeah, now I'm back in that situation where I'm just gonna die when I press fight, because everything in this is, I think everything is deterministic. Yeah, so there's no randomness, which means trying the same combat twice can't lead to different outcomes. You know, the definition of insanity is headbutting the same loot box 6 times in a row and expecting a different outcome. So we can't get different outcomes, and at the moment the set of things I've got, they don't interact enough for me to be able to rearrange this and then click fight and get a different outcome. So I think you have 2 different possible routes to solve this problem. Is like, the problem is, once I've lost 1 heart, I may as well lose both hearts because I cannot win against the current box. And the way that you resolve that is you either add a little bit more randomness into the damage numbers and stuff here, which might be quite unsatisfying, but it is quite a gambly game already. And the other way that you potentially solve it is making sure there are more vertical interactions between the limbs, because if there were, then there's a good chance I'd be able to rearrange these parts and come up with a combo that deals more damage. But at the moment, I don't think there is any way I can rearrange these which would do any damage, any more damage than last time. So I'm gonna end up in the same situation where they have 2 health left, I think. So yeah. Neat game, really neat idea, lots of fun stuff there. Like, it's a bit janky in places, there's stuff you could do to make this like visually more appealing, like I've talked about. But I think that is the biggest design problem that you need to solve at the moment, is what happens when you can't beat the box. Like, what can the player then do to beat it next time? Because at the moment you don't. You lose 1 heart and you're going to lose the next heart unless you have specific combinations of things that can be rearranged. I didn't feel like there were enough interactions between the different moves for rearranging it to do anything in that case. But that's cool. I'm going to leave that one there because I think we've seen everything with that one. But I think that one was pretty neat. Let me just swap my screens around again, because we've got a hell Inception thing going on here. There we go. And back to the games list. So we've had a look at the first 3. We had Become the Moon first, which was that kind of card-based auto-battler. That prototype for that kind of action programming game, Galactic Combat. And then we had Loot Boxer, which was another kind of action programming game, really. And yeah, really impressed with everything I've seen so far. So let's move on to the last one. I just want to quickly show you a beloved game of my youth. So there was a version of this for PlayStation, and then I think there was a later one for like the portable or something. Welcome. And this is peak programming games, because it's not necessarily like a Zachtronics game where everything is happening on this programming screen. You program your robot using these little nodules. So here you can see it's doing a check with like, is there an enemy within 300 meters? Yes, well then do this. No, then turn this way. Right, so you make this grid, and then you see some very janky sort of Star Fox looking 3D environment, and you might have like 3 different robots here that you've built differently. You know, one might be a tank, one might be a mech, and they all have their internal kind of circuit board that you've built, and then you just watch it, and they walk around and attack each other, and it was a really funny game because the combat is quite slow and long. So if you've really broken your robot's circuit board, then they might just end up like running around in a circle or something like that, and that's fun. I like games where you can have funny epic fails, and action programming is a really good genre for that because you set the thing up and then you watch it go wrong, and that's kind of like the appeal of like a heist movie like Ocean's 11 as well. Is like you get to see all this planning, and you know at some point something is going to go wrong in that chain of events, and then they have to improvise, right? Except in this case, you can't improvise because you can't take control of the robot, so you just have to watch it flail around and die. The last game on the list today is called RNG Jesus Slayer, which is a very, very memey kind of title, but let's have a look. I always feel a bit wary when a game has a very kind of memey gamer culture title. Let's see what we've got on the. What does the spreadsheet say about this? Okay, so there's some explanation around where AI has been used. So yeah, when I get people to submit games, I usually get them to say if they put any AI stuff in it. And here it's mainly been used for localization, which is fine as long as it produces okay results. I'm just a bit wary of things with too much like visual AI stuff in, because I often think it just doesn't produce better results than just making something yourself. Okay, let's do English. Okay, so we are doing... what does it say in Steam? We are doing Slay the Spire meets slot machine. The cards are dealt by spinning a slot machine. Hit the jackpot by landing the same card on all 3 reels. So this is either going to be really, really compelling, or it might end up feeling a bit soulless. Let's see. I'm going to sit over here with the Raven. Hello, Raven. I'm going to need to move my logo as well. Click on the spin button to start this tutorial, honey. Oh, I've got Demon King and Wife. They're my 2 characters. Click on a card to use. Defeat all enemy to continue, dear. There's a lot of character there already. Okay, I'll go down here. Attack and magic. It's sort of going off the screen a bit with the tooltip. That gives me 3 mana. I can't see what mana does. Seems that the wife needs mana to do stuff. And Demon King does the attacks. That's nice and clear. Wife shop. Golden mana reset to 0 at the start of next turn. Remember to use them. Okay, I've got 0 gold, so I'll come back here when I've got some gold. I've got some gold now, so I can go in the shop. Okay. I mean, I'm going to go for the thing with the shinies on it, surely. Right, Demon Sword. Why am I fighting her? Look at her. She's just a girl that likes flowers. I don't want to fight her. Okay, so if you get multiple cards of the same type, they stack. See the end turn is down here? So the developer for this one is Vietnamese. So one of the things you'll notice with UI and UX design is when you have a game that's native to a language that reads left to right, then the bottom right of the screen is usually where you click to progress. And if you have a game coming from a language culture that reads right to left, then the bottom left. And this is a really annoying thing if you want to make a game that works right for everyone, because in my case here, I'm a Westerner, so I expect this button to be down here in the bottom right and it's in the bottom left. So you can put the effort in to flip that based on what language you're playing on. The solution that some developers use is to put stuff in the middle, even though it should actually be on the right or the left to appear as a continue button. In this tutorial, the results from the slot machine are fixed, but in the game, it's all depending on RNG Jesus. RNG Jesus be damned, you will be victorious. Ember Seeker. I'm in front of the wife shop button. Maybe I just need to be down here. So the rainbow is a free spin. Yeah, it's the wife shop. It's not a shop where you buy wives. This character is wife, right? So I've got Demon King and Demon King's wife, and she is in charge of the shop, which makes total sense when you think about it. 2 gold. Okay, so when I buy these things, I'm adding them to the reel up here. So it's a bit like sort of modifying your dice in a game or something like that. Yeah, we don't have any music on this one. Although, given the kind of general vibe of the game, I'm maybe thankful to take a break from any music. We've had some pretty zany music in the last couple of games, so I just know this would have like cafe jazz or something like really over the top. So these cost quite a lot. You only keep your gold for 1 turn. So when you buy something and add it to your reel, you get it to use that turn, and then it can come back around later. So I guess the difference between this and a deck builder is instead of like getting stuff in your deck, playing it, discarding it, and then getting it back later when you've been through the whole deck, you've always got a chance to get everything every turn because it's on these spinny reels, right? If any of you play board games, there's a game called Dice Forge that works a bit like this, where everything structurally is similar to a deck builder, but they're like the dice that you used to get in Lego games, where you can click out the sides and put new sides in. So you will start with the same set of 2 dice, and then you gradually modify the sides of each die to make it more powerful. It's the same sort of thing going on here. Spells will cost more mana the more you use them. So use them strategically, cutie. Vietnamese is left to right. That's interesting. So yeah, I would expect the next turn thing to be over here. In fact, because this game is like visually drawing on things like Final Fight and Street Fighter, or Final Fight and like Golden Axe, I would have a next turn arrow here that looks like the go across thing that you used to get in those games where you clear an area and it would have like a big thing telling you to go to the next thing. When cards of the same type hit next to each other, they will upgrade. It's like hitting the jackpot. Yay. So these are swords. They upgrade when they land together. We've got a 32 damage sword there and a 15 damage sword. I basically get to play everything that I roll. There's not an element of like energy management where I can only... Okay. So what am I going to start off with on that thing? Staff, axe, doom gold. Gold 8. That first one looks way more powerful than the others because we've got like one really powerful axe. Go with that one. I feel like there's quite an overwhelming amount of choice at the start of this. So we've got enemies to choose from. I'm going to go for the one that gives me more cards because that's kind of simple. So a lot of this these typographic choices are making some of this a little bit hard to read. You know, the kind of simple rule with typography is pick one fancy font for like titles and one easy to read font, and this is kind of just slows the whole game down because it's just a bit harder to read. Play cards after spinning, sweetie. Okay. So I think having the spin button up here would make a lot of sense. Like putting it next to the thing that it operates. So I know end turn is down here, but I just feel like this is not a great position to have anything really down here. Got 12 gold. These are upgrades, maybe? I don't know what I just did then. When I click those, I can sort of see what's happening, but I can't see if I'm spending anything on it. I think I was spending gold on it, maybe. So instead of going in the wife shop and buying new tiles for this machine, I was just upgrading the ones that were there. I don't know. You sort of end up using everything that you roll. Yeah, this is a demo. Like pretty much everything I do on this stream is a demo. If something is finished and released, then I don't play it on this stream. We're only interested in stuff that isn't finished. Copy symbol from reel to hand. Okay. See, the gold is up here. And I need to use gold in these, but I also need to use gold in the shop. I think maybe this isn't as prominent as it could be. So I click on that and it shows me all the things I can upgrade using gold. And then I can use gold in this shop to buy stuff to go on my reel. And then every turn I can basically use everything I roll. Although that has a... okay. So some things I can't use because they require mana. Which is this bar here. I think there are a lot of resources in this game, and the way a lot of them are positioned on the screen is really unintuitive. Because we've got the Demon King's health here, right? And we've got the mana here on the wife character. And I get what we're trying to do thematically by putting these things here, but like the health bar, that's a major resource. That should be like a massive thing on the screen somewhere. Same with the mana. Like these should be really big standout things, and they're sort of relegated to being associated with these characters when they're not really, you know? Yeah, I think there's just a lot of stuff going on with the UI of this. I think that the main game and the idea for the game is pretty solid. And everything looks nice, but there's just some, like, the way things are positioned in relation to each other doesn't make them feel associated, you know? I kind of want to cut the screen up and move everything around. Copy symbol from reel to hand. Copy the gold. Get more gold. Buy something else. Lock a reel. So that means we can just keep one of these in place. I'm going to keep the sword in place so that when we spin... When we spin that, it... The sword has stayed there because I locked it from last turn. Okay. You can tell I'm overwhelmed because I can't finish sentences. Right, wife shop. What have we got in the wife shop this time? Let's get another sword. The flow of this game is really good. Like, in terms of the basic rules of the game make sense. Everything is visually appealing. The kind of tactical thinking that is going on is satisfying, but the position of everything on the screen is causing quite a lot of friction that doesn't need to be there. So I think I am actually going to chop it up because I think that's the most helpful thing I can do with the end of this screen. So with the end of this stream. So let me just do a screen grab of this. We're going to whack it on Canva and have a think about what would be a easier to read layout for this. So I've just screen grabbed that. I'm going to open it on Canva and just hope Canva doesn't open to anything awful that I've had open. Let's go. Bear with me 1 second while I get this ready. Because I like this game. And I've done the kind of like, I don't do this every time, but I have done this sort of stuff before. And I think when it just feels like a matter of layout, maybe there's stuff we can do. So yeah, the fonts are too stylized. That's the first thing. And then there's like a general idea in UI design that basically you position things higher up, the less you have to interact with them, right? So it's kind of like if you imagine if you imagine a plane, right, which is where we get heads-up display from. HUD, heads-up display. So heads-up display is the information that we need, but we don't interact with it, right? And that's like what would be in your little visor or above you in the screen in a plane. And then everything else that's in the graphical user interface that is something we need to interact with should be further down the screen. Because that kind of innately tells the player that this is the stuff you're playing with, right? So in a game like this, we have a kind of game world where there's characters and stuff, and we're not directly interacting with that. So it can be further away from us. And then the stuff that we need to interact with should be generally along the bottom of the screen, unless it's something that we don't interact with very often. So these icons up at the top, they can be up at the top because that makes sense. So the first thing I would do is I would say all of this stuff can stay where it is, right? Because this is general information about your progress through the stage. That's probably in the right place for what it is. And then over here, and I don't know if the dev's in the chat for this one, but I hope you don't sort of find it offensive that I'm chopping up your game like this. But I think the game is really neat, and I think it could do very, very well. But I think some of this UX stuff is going to really hamper it. So if I were to move things around, I would do it like this. So characters over there, players' characters can be directly in a line with them. And then we get all of this space at the bottom to work with. And I really think everything that you interact with in this game, that you interact with regularly every turn, should be at the bottom. So you can keep the cards in the bottom right, like you've got them, and you can keep the slot machine in the left, but I would bring it down to the bottom because you're interacting with them very regularly. So they're like the player's control panel, right? So having them at the bottom sort of makes them feel like they're close to you. And these characters are a kind of passive part of the game. You want to see them, right? You want to see them and you want to focus on them because these are telling you information about the game state, like how much health they have and stuff like that. And they're also the kind of story of what's happening in the game. So I would want them in a central focal point like that. And then everything that's interactive should really be down here close to you. So the cards are already close to us, which is good because it gives us the impression they're in our hand, right? It'd be really weird to have a hand of cards in a game and have it like in the distance, right? So they're up close to us. But this is also something we're using regularly. And again, someone in the chat said Vietnamese is a left to right language. I didn't know that. But I think this arrangement would be the best one because then your cards that you're using every turn are over here, where the bottom right, if you're in a left to right language, you read in a Z shape. So you go top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. And that means that your eye rests on the bottom right. So this is the kind of most prime real estate in terms of where people are going to focus. And that's why on an app, when they have a give us lots of money button, they always put it in the bottom right, right? The bottom left is generally a bit more of a dead zone. But because we're following this principle of like what's closest to us is the most interactive, I would put the spin stuff down here. And then I would maybe have your spin button here. Or maybe end turn goes over here and ending the turn just automatically starts the next spin. Because I couldn't see a situation where you needed another step of friction between ending the turn and doing the next spin. And I even had a situation during the game where I was trying to play before I'd spinned and the wife character was saying, hey, you can't do that. You haven't spinned yet. And I just thought, well, why don't you just spin it automatically at the start of a turn? And maybe you don't want players to miss that spin, but you kind of could just make it slower or something like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think this general approach, and then what I would do would be, what's the game? How did they do the next arrow on games like Golden Axe? They had like a big arrow. I'm not going to find it. Like one obscure interface element of a 30-year-old game. I'm almost certain that Spriter's resource or Sprite database is not going to have the UI stuff. But yeah, I think when a turn is finished, I would put the end turn stuff over here. Just so it feels like, because there's a battle happening. These characters are coming this way. They're defeating enemies here. They're moving this way. Presumably, that's what the arrangement of the battle is supposed to indicate. So we have end turn here because it's kind of pushing in that same direction of like the left to right movement of the battle. Yeah, all of the sidewalking fighters have that thing. And then you can kind of evoke that genre of game by having that. When the turn is finished, we have a big end turn, arrow facing to the right, and it's kind of blinking, right? You click that, and then the next spin happens. Because unless you have any specific gameplay feature where you would want to do something between ending a turn and doing the next spin, it would be much better to just go straight into it. But yeah, I think this is generally how I would arrange everything to make it flow better. And then the shop, see, that's quite an important feature, and it's a tiny little button down here. And I would make that much bigger. And then we've associated this with all of this stuff down here now. Whereas before, it's totally separate. It's separate from this top set of things, even though it is related to them. And it's separate from this set of things, even though it's related to them. Because you buy something in the wife shop, you get it as a card, and it goes into your slot machine. And now, by having everything on the bottom row and putting this in relation to them, it seems like it's the same sort of thing, right? In the game, end turn and wife shop are associated with each other because they're sitting together there, and they're not. They don't have anything to do with each other, right? These are not a category of things that deserve to be next to each other like that. So we bring the wife shop down into this set of UI that's at the bottom. That's like a kind of, I mean, it could even be there, right? And then you'd have like a whole interface that feels like a kind of, you know, cockpit. You're driving a car. Here's all the stuff close to you that you interact with. And end turn is over here. It's really big and prominent, but it's not part of this interface at the bottom because it's something you don't want to accidentally click on as well. And if the player is mainly moving their mouse around the bottom of the screen, then they're not accidentally going to end the turn. They have to go up here to end the turn. And then up here, we only have like this kind of information, which is sort of passive information that you don't click on. And these kind of things that you maybe click on very rarely, once an hour or something like that. I think that would solve a lot of it for me. And then these resources, I get what you're going for by putting them on the characters, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense to have a resource like that is such an important thing in the game and not have it really prominent, you know? Like, you can have it in both places. I think Slay the Spire even does that. Let's have a look. I think they do that on Slay the Spire. Yeah, so it's a weird thing to do, but they did do it in Slay the Spire. They have, let's just zoom in on that. They have the player character's health up here, and they have it on the player character, right? And I would imagine the reason they ended up making that decision is that there wasn't a better place for it. There was like players that would look for it here and players that would look for it here. So having it in both places just solves that problem. The other thing we get from this is that having the health at the top, this is almost like your meta game of like, okay, I'm going to die and my run's going to end if this goes down to 0. But when I look at it here, I get the context of the current fight, which gives me like all of the stats, all of the status effects on my character, their shield, you know, my health is currently being protected. So that blue bar goes round the health bar, right? So this is the same information as what's up here, but the context is a little bit different because this is just flat out telling me I'm 1 HP away from dying and my game will be over. This one down here is giving me all this other information about, I don't know, maybe this means I get a free shield every turn. I can't remember what these mean. And that my health is protected by 6, right? So if they attack me and they only do 6, I'm not going to die this turn, right? There's a lot more contextual information here. It's giving me kind of 2 ways of doing that. I think just having the stats on the characters is not as helpful, and I think you should have one place where it's just really big. So I would have this, like, again, it's passive information. The player doesn't need to interact with it, so I would put it at the top. And like, however you want to arrange that, it doesn't really matter so much. But it's way too small and it's way too associated with those individual characters when it's actually like a big driving thing of the game. And then money would be up here somewhere as well because we've got 2 gold here. And yeah, we use gold in this shop and we use gold here. So maybe that is the right place for gold. But again, I would think gold is passive information. It's not a button we click on, right? So maybe we make it a lot bigger so you're always aware of it and we put it up here somewhere. And then that way you keep all of these things as things that are kind of clickable or directly interactive, and that information can go up here, which I think is where most people would look for it. Like most games that are very interface heavy strategy games, they keep the resources along the top, again, because they're passive information. They're information you need all the time. You always need to know how much gold you have. You always need to know how much health you have. But it's not something you click on. So moving them up the top kind of reserves the bottom space for the stuff that the player is interacting with, right? So we've got, if you think of what's happening here, we've got 3 areas of screen space. We've got a middle strip, which is the current situation in the world of the characters, which is letting us know about, you know, who's going to die soon, and that will give us general information about what we should do next, of whether we should do something defensive or offensive. We need that's kind of central because it's giving us all that information, and it's also the story of the game of like what's happening for us to kind of latch onto thematically about, you know, what's cool about this game world. And it's quite a charming game world. I like the idea of the Demon King and his long-suffering wife fighting all of these characters. It's cute. People are going to be attracted to that. So put it all in the middle, make it central, and then we have passive information at the top. It's important, but it's for your eyes, and you don't have to keep moving the mouse all the way. Like pushing the mouse up always feels like more of an effort than moving the mouse left to right. And then the mouse just generally stays down in this bottom half. Maybe it comes up to get some tooltips up here when it needs to, but it kind of stays around in this bottom third, actually. This bottom third of the screen space that is kind of dedicated to the stuff that we are interacting with turn to turn. Because at the moment, it's just like there are too many things that do not feel associated with each other or feel associated with the wrong thing. But yeah, that's a really neat game idea. Lots of stuff in it feels really good. I'll just load it up and play one more round, so if anyone has come in really late, they'll kind of see what I'm talking about. Yeah, maybe calling it a shop is a bit confusing because of the fact that you're fighting. But so, a couple more rounds. I'm not sure what that spells cost mana to play. Okay, so there's a few more UX things here. So basically, any card that doesn't have a cost in the top left, I can play for free, right? So I'm going to do those first. And then what's happening here is that this is a mana cost, right? So the mana is my wife's blue bar. And when it's playable, it's a blue number. And when it's not playable, it's a red number. And I'm not sure if that works because we're using red to indicate damage here as well. And indicating damage to enemy characters with red and then also using it to indicate that you can't afford something is a little bit confusing. I might go the Hearthstone route here, make this mana crystal a deeper blue, and then go with white and then red on a blue mana crystal. Because it kind of makes it look like it's a different type of thing. Because the colour of the number is so prominent. So I'm going to use the magic sword, which is going to charge up our next attack. The interactions between these is really fun once you understand how the cost and stuff works. I'm going to end the turn. Okay, so the flow is they attack, then the spin happens. Makes sense. Okay. 2 gold. I can level this sword up. I got it refunded. I don't know how that worked, but I'm fine with it because it benefits me. We've got 4 gold. Can I afford anything? No, I can't. The other thing as well, it's like if you think of this is the focal point of the screen, and there's just nothing in it. Right, everything is pushed in a circle around the edge. And this is, you know, the center. Things should be closer to the center so that you can kind of see them without moving your eyes around as much, you know? Wife shop. Nope, don't have any money. It's very satisfying the way this works. So this highlight means that they landed on the same one next to each other, and that gives them an upgrade. And that's a really nice use of the kind of deck buildery stuff with the slot machine stuff together. Because it opens up the possibility to like deliberately build so that these have similar things in them so that you can try and roll combos like that. Oh, did you just come in, Nick? I opened Canva and moved everything around. Because yeah, this is a really cool idea for a game. It's quite well executed, but the typography is very hard to read, and the general layout of it is just not as conducive to playing the game as it could be. And I'm glad you saw the same thing as me. Because yeah, I played it for a little while, and I'm like, this game is not as complicated as I'm feeling it is as I play it. Right? It's sort of hurting my brain way more than it should, and I realized it was because I'm sort of like, there's these corners where everything is, and I'm moving around like this to look over there and then look down there, and it's just like unnecessary. And I think it just I think maybe some of the layout is kind of has been thought about in terms of what's visually nice rather than what it feels like to look around and move a mouse around. So that's why I was, waffling on about, sections of screen space, right? Common interactions at the bottom, the core thing that's happening that we need to read and react to in the middle, passive information at the top. Yeah, this is kind of what I would go for. And I would still want to make the typography on these cards a little bit more legible and stuff like that. But in terms of just making the whole game make more sense, this kind of layout probably fixes 90% of the potential problems with this game. We're gonna need a separate channel for Nick to do UI stuff for games. Honestly, so much of what I end up talking about on this channel ends up being UI, and it's not an area that I'm a kind of specialist in, but I usually understand enough to feel what's wrong, and I can usually suggest some sort of fixes to it, but it's not. I mean, I guess I'm a generalist anyway. I don't have a thing I specialize in really. But if I did, UI is definitely not it. But there's an approach in studios where you sort of say UX is everyone's job, and I kind of agree with that, because you can have the best plan for your UX and your UI, and if people still don't get it, then it doesn't really matter who came up with it, whether they were a game designer or a user interface designer or whatever. If people don't understand it, then it doesn't do its job, right? I think if you have this kind of summary screen, you really do need to make things appear bit by bit as well, so that we can have our eye directed around, because I don't know what on here is important. I would go through this whole screen. I'm not going to do it because we've already run over and I want to stop. But I would go through this whole screen and I would think, what on this screen is important for players to know to continue playing the game and doing well? And what is important for players to know to feel good, right? So a lot of these vanity stats that just tell us how many of something you did, they don't need to have a color highlight or anything like that. Rewards may be more important. But every bit here where we've got a different font or a different color variation, it needs to be able to justify itself. And I don't see these ones as justifying themselves. Let's go to rewards. Cards. Yeah, I want a demon axe. Yeah, it is all hierarchy work. It's what's important to know right now. I'm a big fan of the squint test as well. Of I'm getting a workshop ready for this. This is a good time to plug the workshop. Next Tuesday, I'll do a live workshop. I've been doing these live workshops every couple of weeks, and the last couple have been about storytelling in games, and we're actually going to switch to UI. because it's something that I keep getting questions about, keep getting good examples of it, like this one here. And one of the great tests you can do with an interface is just squinting at it or blurring it. You can digitally blur it if you want to be boring, or if you don't have eyelashes so you can't squint properly. But I've got an example here. So this is the Hamlet menu from Darkest Dungeon, right? When you squint at it. And you can squint at that, and the information hierarchy is still really, really clear, even when it's all blurred like this. You can see where the important stuff is. Because of the use of color, because of the use of relative contrast, and even if we make it black and white and squint at it, the information hierarchy here is still pretty strong, right? Here's the information hierarchy in combat, in terms of, right, like low importance bits of the screen look like this. They are grey and black. They do not do much to draw your attention. High importance parts of the screen use the colors. They use the internal contrast, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think Darkest Dungeon has an incredibly good interface for that. And one of the issues with these kind of arcadey games, I think, is you sort of want everything to be visually noisy because it's kind of a genre thing that people expect, and it kind of gives it this casino-y type feel. And that sort of aesthetic can really just get in the way of good user interface practice, of just like what is important here to know, like if these cards are sold and I can't get them, should that be a really bright orange color? Because it's now drawing my eye to something that is not functional. I can't do anything with that. So maybe a sold should be grayed out, right? So we push it down the hierarchy. This title, bright red, draws my eye. Like, knowing how much gold I've got is important for my interaction with this shop. So 9 gold, that should be a massive number in a hot color, right? That is drawing my eye because it's something that I need to be aware of, because I need to see what of this I can afford. The fact that this menu is called the wife shop, I already know that because I clicked on the button that says wife shop to get here. So this doesn't need to be like massively bold and in a hot color. Yeah, it's just, and this screen is like, so much of it is vying for my attention that I just don't know what is important on here. I mean, it's a workshop in the sense that I'll be asking questions throughout and incorporating what the chat is saying. So the thing is, I don't want to call what I do lectures, because that has such a negative connotation. Like, the word lecture literally gets picked up by Google's sentiment analysis as being something that people say when they're being aggressive, right? Because the other day, I looked in my held comments. If you've got a YouTube channel, you'll see this. There's like a held comments section where you can kind of check it occasionally to see if anyone's calling you a douchebag. And someone had said, "I really appreciate these lecture style videos. Thank you." And that had been held, even though it was a compliment. And there was nothing else in that phrasing or anything that made it seem like an attack. But because it had the word lecture in it, was flagged as a thing. So, yeah. Maybe I'll call it a class. I can call it a class if you'd prefer. Class works as well. But yeah, you're right. Workshop does sound quite interactive. The last couple, when we've done them with the narrative stuff, I have put sort of tasks in them where I'm like, here is an activity you can do with your game. But we're not like doing it live, right? Yeah, people just really, really have bad associations with the term lecture because it gets used as a, don't lecture me. And it's like, well, if I was literally lecturing you, I'd have slides, wouldn't I? Like, people use it to mean scold. Like, don't scold, don't preach to me, don't scold to me. If it was a lecture, I would have slides. There would be some reading you would need to do. I'm going to go with class just because it's got less letters. Right. Thank you for joining today. If you missed the ones earlier, the VOD will be up. You can kind of rewind or whatever. We had some really interesting games this time. And do like the stream, because that means that this shows up in more people's what's its recommends and stuff like that. So what we'll be doing on Tuesday, when I do this UI class workshop, lecture, scold, whatever you want to call it, we will have a couple of examples that have come from games that are being made currently in our Discord. So I've asked a few people if they want to submit for that, and we'll be kind of breaking them down as we look at them, because it's like every time we cover a topic, I have to do a little bit of research around it, and I need to have to go and read like what other people are saying about like UI best practices for games. And there's basically two types of content, and one is let me just jump onto the slides for a minute, because you can see this. One type of content that I find is stuff like this, which is like a really good GDC talk by a AAA user interface designer. And this is great because I can like bottle it down and say, right, how can indies use this knowledge? And the other stuff is like so general that it's useless. This kind of stuff, where it's like, this dude has made an infographic that puts things into 4 categories: non-diegetic, diegetic, spatial, and meta UI. And then he explains these categories, and none of it really applies to making things. It's all just a taxonomy of like, what type of interface element is this? And it doesn't really help us that much. And those seem to be the two types of resource I find. It's like either really, really in-depth, like 2-hour presentation by someone at GDC, or trying to present a general principle in a way that is so broad that it's not really applicable to anything anyone's doing. So I've gathered a bunch of stuff together that's like general UI thinking that people can apply to their games. We'll look through that, and then we'll look through specific examples that people have submitted. And I know, so is it Neek? I think Neek has already been quite active in the Discord with some of the things that have been submitted and already given them feedback that's way better than I can do. So those people will already have got their feedback. But yeah, I think it's a lot more helpful, particularly when you're working in indie, to just analyze like specific examples of things. And it can be helpful to go like, okay, here are Gestalt principles for graphic design, and then apply them to something. But if you don't apply them to anything, then you don't really learn what they mean or like how they work. So we'll look at examples from games that have very solid interfaces. So I've got some stuff here for Darkest Dungeon. I've got some stuff here from Mystria, Fields of Mystria. Looking at what they do well and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll look at some examples of interfaces from games that people are working on in the Discord, and like do a sort of live feedback thing about that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Neek, have you read Game World Interfaces by Jorgensen? Because they had a... So they did an episode on this on Game Studies Study Buddies recently. This one. Episode 81, Jorgensen Game World Interfaces. And so this podcast is about game studies. So a lot of the books they cover are sort of like humanities books. They're like, what do games mean, rather than how a game's made. But this book is particularly interesting because it sort of makes the argument of like everything in a game is interface. And it's not just that we have a game world which is fiction, a graphical user interface layer, and then sometimes we have like diegetic interface, like Isaac's health bar in Dead Space, or yellow paint on things you can climb. It's that like everything in the game is designed with visual affordances and is the interface for the game, right? So characters are the interface for the game, items on the floor and all that kind of stuff. It's a really interesting sort of... It seems kind of radical. It shouldn't be radical. And I think maybe if you're a UI designer and you're used to separating the UI out as a layer, then maybe this seems like a radical idea. For me as a game designer, it doesn't seem radical at all, because you think of things like, oh, this object is treasure and this object is a hazard, and the hazard needs to be spiky and red, and the treasure needs to be sparkly and gold, so the player looks at them and immediately knows to avoid one and go to the other. That to me is interaction design, so it's interface. But I think we're so used to thinking about interfaces strictly as being menus and things that you can click on and HUDs and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's kind of going a step too far, because most people just need to know, how do I make a HUD? And yeah. But I do think the kind of cockpit metaphor, the cockpit metaphor works very well for me. Of like, stuff I'm interacting with a lot should be close to me, right? It's my steering wheel. It's how I'm interacting with the game. And if there's something that I need to use constantly to interact with the game, it's at the bottom of the screen. If there's information I need to check every couple of minutes, it's at the top of the screen. If there's information that I don't need to click on directly, but I need to sort of use it to understand the moment-to-moment thing, it's the path ahead of me. It's the middle of the screen, right? It's just like kind of how things would be in the cockpit of a plane or in a car or something like that. Not that you have a health bar at the top of a windscreen in a car, but you kind of get the idea. Yeah, exactly. The front end all needs to work together. Yeah. And then you get interesting overlaps, right? Where, like in Left 4 Dead, they had these outlines around the characters. That's kind of like a interface that's in the game world, right? But they would... there's a mode where you can turn them off. And it kind of just dramatically changes how the game feels to play, because you can't see where the other players are and you have to talk to each other more, right? And that's a whole interesting thing of like cooperative games. And in order for cooperative games to be fun, you usually have to give people less clues, because you want them to communicate. So you end up taking away helper mechanics and elements of GUI so that players have something to communicate with each other about. That's a really, really interesting one. And it kind of applies to board games as well. When you get cooperative board games like Pandemic, it's like limiting the amount of information that is available to everyone, so that players have to tell each other information about the game state, because they have their own thing that they know and the other players don't know. Very, very interesting. And I think some of the strongest cooperative video games are built around that principle as well, of like, a cooperative game has different needs in terms of how much information you give to players, or what information you make public to all players versus what information you just give to one player and then hope that they'll communicate with the others or lie to the others if it's that kind of game, right? Right, I'm going to wrap up now because I've got to get on with some other stuff. But thank you all for joining. Please do like the stream so more people see these and come to them. I'm not doing one next Thursday. Normally I do this Indies Under the Knife every Thursday, where we look at 4 games that have been sent in. I'm taking a break next week because I've got a medical thing, and then we'll be back the Thursday after. They're all scheduled. The next 3 or 4 are scheduled. They're all on the YouTube homepage, so you can go on and put alerts on for them and stuff like that. Thank you for coming. And yeah, I'll see you all soon.